Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gananaam tva ganapati gum havamahe, kavim kavinamupamashravastamam, jyeshtarajam brahmanam brahmanaspata anashranvannutibhisida sadanam. Shri Mahaganadhipataye Namaha. Namaste. We're starting a text called Tattvabodha. Tattvabodha is a compound word that has two words in it. So when you split it, one word is Tattvam and the other word is Bodha. And Bodha means knowledge. Bodha means knowledge. And Tattvam is the essence or the real nature. Okay? So, or you can even call it the reality. So that is the Tattvam. So Tattvabodha, you can translate. And if you ask, what is reality? So what reality of what? Or what is the true nature or whatever? If you ask specifically, then it is the true nature of yourself. Okay, so then you might wonder, I already know myself. What do you mean by true nature? You might ask such a question. When you do that, what Vedanta teaches us, Vedanta is the philosophy, the Hindu philosophy. It comes from scriptures called the Vedas. It's huge, it's very vast knowledge. So anyway, so what the Vedas teach us is that an individual is, to begin with, confused about the real nature of the self. Okay? So what we take ourselves to be is not the real self. We need to do a lot of inquiry before arriving at the true nature of the self. So that's what it is. So Tattvam is conducting a lot of inquiry and arriving at that which is the real nature of the self. Okay? So if you look at the word Tattvabodha now, it can be understood as self-knowledge. Okay? So that is Tattvabodha. So this is a text that I have chosen to teach, because if you study this text, then if you want to pursue with the study of Bhagavad Gita, which is a very beautiful text authored by Sri Krishna, this will help, because all the terminologies and all of that is introduced here, and there are certain ways that the self is revealed, and that is also, we'll see 2 or 3 ways that the self is revealed. Okay, there's only one self. But to reveal it, there are many methods that you can use. It can be revealed in so many different ways. And they're called prakriyas. So you will see 3 of those in this text itself. That's why this is a good introductory text. There are other introductory texts too, but this one kind of has a lot of information in it. It's not in detail, but it has so many things in it that it makes it easier for you to study the Bhagavad Gita. Or if you want to study other Vedantic texts, which are the philosophical texts, called the Upanishads. It makes it easier if you have studied this. That's why we always start with the teachers from my parampara, the tradition. They start with this text. Okay, so I thought I will do the same thing, and so we're going to study this knowledge of the self. So then, especially in America, we have this thing. Of this habit of asking, what's in it for me? What benefit is it to me? Why should I study it? Suppose I study this, and then I study Bhagavad Gita, and then go on to studying the Upanishads and all of those things. What is the benefit? What is the real benefit? So right now, I know myself to be whatever it is that I am, and I know that I also change with time. So, what I took myself to be when I was a younger person is something different from what I take myself to be today, right? So it changes, and tomorrow I'll be wiser, and maybe I'll take myself to be something else. But it seems to be okay. Everybody seems to be going about their lives, and so what is the real benefit of studying these texts, you might wonder, and what is the real benefit of knowing the true nature of myself? These kinds of questions might arise, and also as we start progressing with this text, it'll talk about the qualifications required for a person to pursue the study of these scriptures. Okay, So then you will start wondering, my God, that is so difficult to acquire. These qualities, very difficult to acquire. And you can only try. There's no guarantee that you're going to acquire. That also will be talked about later. But you wonder, why should I go through all this trouble? Right? Why should I go through all this trouble and try to know the real nature of the self? And then what is it? What is in it for me? This is the question, right? That might arise. So the answer is there are many, many, many benefits to studying these scriptures, and also trying to develop the qualities required for acquiring this knowledge. Okay, just even the very first step you take towards acquiring this benefit, this quality that is needed for study of these scriptures, the very first step itself will make your life so much better. So there it starts the benefit. Okay, so to be more specific, the first benefit is jitnyasa nivrittihi. Okay, that is, we humans, okay, not any other life forms, just humans. As being a human being, we have a basic inquiring nature. We're inquisitive. We want to know. That's why when we drive on a highway or something, suddenly we see something by the side of the road, and we all look. This is called rubbernecking, right? You've heard that. So because of that, the traffic itself slows down, because we're curious people. We want to know. We cannot live with ignorance. If you catch a clue of something, you have to go and find out what it is all about, right? You won't stop until you know everything about it. So we are curious people, and so at some point or the other in our lives, we may have wondered, who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose of being here? These kinds of questions we would have entertained at some point or the other. And we may even have asked our parents. We may have said, hey, what is all this? Why was I born? Why did you make me, bring me into this world? We might ask them, right? And then they would not be able to answer that question, to be honest. They would say, I don't know. I didn't ask for you specifically. I just did what I did, I desired for something and I got you, so they won't be able to answer. So in India especially, what they do is they say, you shouldn't ask such questions. They will shun you. They will not ask you, they will not allow you to ask these questions, especially if they are very religious-minded people. Then they would say, you shouldn't question anything. You should just believe. That's it, So questions are not encouraged. So at some point or the other, or sometimes it's much later in our lives, we start wondering. I have all of these desires. I go out there and I fulfill these desires, and I seem to be happy momentarily, but then it slips away. Even when I don't want it to, it slips away. So these kinds of thoughts you may have, right? So this is called jitnyasa, the wanting to know. Okay, so in this context, you have to take jitnyasa as the wanting, the desire to know your own true self. Okay, so if you have this deep desire to know the true nature of your own self, then that will be fulfilled by studying texts like this. Okay, so this is called jitnyasa nivritti. So if you have this longing to know who you are, that longing will be fulfilled by studying this. This is the first benefit that you get by studying texts like this. Okay, and then the second benefit, it's called ananda praptihi. Ananda is bliss, and you'll gain it. So the first one is something that you'll get rid of, which is the longing to know something. So that is ignorance. You can take that as ignorance, right? So you can remove, your ignorance will be removed. That is the first benefit. Second benefit is, you will, as a result of removing this ignorance, you will gain bliss. Okay? Bliss or beatitude. It's not the opposite of sadness. So what is the opposite of sukha? The opposite of pleasure. It is pain. Right? So ananda means bliss. Does it have an opposite? The answer is no. It doesn't have an opposite. It transcends the everyday sukha and dukkha. So sukha, dukkha means pleasure and pain. So everyday pleasure and pain is transcended. And then you arrive at this, the very source of that sukha, the happiness, Okay, so there's sukha and dukkha, means pleasure and pain. Which one do you always look for? It is always, I don't, it's a rhetorical question. So you only want the pleasure. You never, ever, ever work for pain. But have you ever succeeded? You have not succeeded, right? It is always a combination of the two, right? So out of the two, you only work for pleasure. But then when you arrive at this bliss, you have transcended both of them. Because the pleasure that we seek and that we also experience every once in a while. Suppose we don't experience any pleasure, then we wouldn't know what the opposite is. We wouldn't know what pain is. Absolutely not, right? Because we only know pleasure in contrast with the pain. So if there's pain and then there's pleasure after that, then in contrast you recognize that as pleasure, right? That's why when we have a certain set of pain and pleasure, we shouldn't judge another person from our perspective. Suppose I'm looking at somebody and that person is suffering, and I conclude that suffering was way worse than my suffering. We shouldn't conclude like that, because that person's suffering is compared with the pleasure that they experienced just before. Okay, so they may not even feeling it. They may not even be feeling that pain, because their pleasure is not the pleasure that you're experiencing. So if for me to conclude that they're in pain, first of all, and their pain is way worse these are all wrong conclusions, because their pain, they have to say if they're in pain or not. It is for each individual has to say. Well, how? Because we are contrasting it with the pleasures that we have. Okay, so for a princess who's used to sleeping in a very comfortable bed, a small green pea, under 7 layers of her bed would be uncomfortable. She would be in pain. She would be tossing and turning and not be able to sleep, right? So this is what I'm talking about. It's just by contrast that we know one from the other. But the ananda that I'm talking about here is not something which is the opposite of pain or even the pleasure that we have experienced so far. This just goes beyond it, and you arrive at that very source of all joy, and abiding in it, you don't, nothing bothers you after that, and it is something that you get to keep for the rest of your life. So this is a good reason why you would want to pursue the text, right? Because this is one of the benefits. You will gain. You'll be able to tap into that very source of all joy, which is actually your own self, and you'll be able to abide in it and not have to go through the pain ever again. So this is a very good reason why you would want to pursue study of this text. Okay, texts like this, there are many. So when you start studying a text like this, we'll be looking at 3 things. One is the world that we are experiencing. The other is Ishvara, if there's a God or not, if there's a source, a power which controls and orchestrates everything in this creation, is there or not. Most people believe that there is, because for example, we eat food every day, right? We eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe even some snacks in between, right? We eat many meals a day. So all we have to do is take the food at one morsel at a time, put it in our mouth, chew it, and swallow it. That's it. That's all we have to do, right? But is that all? That's not all. The food has to go in, and it has to be broken down, and all the nutrients have to be gathered, and it will be distributed to the entire body, and the waste is eliminated. So many things are happening, and it is happening throughout the day, even at night sometimes. Because suppose we eat a snack and go to bed, then even at night this is in function, and you are not even aware of that. So there has to be a power which pervades this body, and it is taking care of that function. I only talked about one function. There are many functions going on in this body, right? And all of that is taken care of. And we don't even have to know how it is done. We don't have to go to a single science class to be able to digest the food we eat, right? So it just happens. So we have to if you don't believe in a particular God with a particular name, at least you have to believe that, you have to know, not just believe, you have to know that there is something operating in this system and is taking care of so many things without even us being aware of it. The breathing is taking place, the blood circulates, the heart pumps. I mean, there are so many functions, so many, I can't even begin to describe all of them, right? That many are taking place. So there is a power that orchestrates everything in this creation. Okay, so that is one aspect. And the other is this adhyatma, this adhyatma, okay? This body, mind that I take myself to be. So there are three of these that we have to inquire into, and we have to arrive at the substratum of each of them, and then then there will be three of them, right? That is wrong. That's the wrong conclusion. There can't be three truths. It is all the one single truth that is manifesting or expressing through these three different things. This is the individual, the world, and Ishvara. Ishvara is the power which orchestrates everything, right? So we'll be studying these three aspects, okay? And that is what is going to remove the jitnyasa, which is the longing to know the true nature of the self, and it's going to give you ananda prapti, which is give you the bliss, which transcends both opposites of pain and pleasure. And then there is another benefit, karpanya nivrittihi. So Vedanta tells you that we are all wretched people. We are kripanas. Means we lack something or the other at all times. We don't find ourselves fulfilled at any moment. Even if we do find ourselves fulfilled, it is very ephemeral. It is temporary, very temporary. We only find ourselves fulfilled for a very short time, and then immediately we are lacking something. That's the reason we're always working to get something or the other, right? Always. We never stop. There's no break in it at all. We are always in the process of becoming. So I am this, I want to be that, right? It's always like that. So I'm a kindergartner, I can't wait to go to first grade. Or I've just finished elementary school, I cannot wait to start middle school. So, I want to become, I want to graduate from middle school, I want to graduate from high school, I want to graduate from a college, and then I want to get a job, and I want this, I want to get married, I want to get children, I want to get a house, I want a car, I want the latest model of the car. I mean, it never ends. So we're never happy, and then we hold on to that one happiness forever. That's just not the case. We're always longing. Right now, what are we longing for? I want to know the self. That is the longing. This is a good longing, but still there's a difference between the two. That we will look later. But the point is, we are wretched people, really, to begin with. So we're always in the process of trying to become something that I am something. I'm not happy with that. I have to become something. I am married, but I want to become a parent, something like that. So on and so forth, right? So that kind of a longing to become something will be quenched by study of the scriptures. So what does that mean? You will realize it's not that you will just accept what is and you're not going to do anything about it. It's not like that. It's not like a giving up of anything. What it is that you will realize that you are full and complete, that there's nothing in you that is lacking. That is the realization. Okay, so there's no need for me to become anything. There's no need for me to aspire, or there's no need for me to go out there and work or anything. There's no need to do anything so that I may improve this, because it's not possible to improve it. It is perfect to begin with. It is full and complete. This is the realization that you will get when you study a scripture like this and you really understand the meaning of the word tattvam. Okay, so there is something called vishayananda. Vishaya is an object of this world. Okay? So when the sense organs interact with the sense objects in the world, then there's a pleasure. Suppose I'm hungry, and so I desire to eat something. So I go out there and I take the food and I eat it, right? So the food now for me is Vishaya. Okay, and then I satisfy the hunger, and then there's pleasure from it, right? This is called Vishayananda. So this is the pleasure. So each time this sense organ comes in contact with a sense object, and there's a pleasure, that is called Vishayananda. And this Vishayananda is limited, because the food that I eat during a lunch is only good until dinner, right? At dinner time, I have to grab a fresh set of things and eat. Right? So this Vishayananda is always limited. But when you gain Atmananda, the real self, the Ananda that I was talking about earlier, the very source of all knowledge, the very source of all happiness, when you gain that, then it'll never deplete. It's not going to go away. You'll be able to hold on to it forever. Next benefit is Aghata Nivritti. Aghata, if you ask, is the literal meaning is a trauma. We find ourselves in traumatic situations. So, and we fall apart. You look around and look for a person who has never had such an experience. It's very rare to find somebody who hasn't had such a traumatic experience. If nothing else, they would have lost a dear family member. And that can be called a traumatic, experience. So, what happens is when something terrible happens, then there's a tendency for you to fall apart, right? And it's not a good feeling at all. It's a very terrible feeling, and it draws us down. It drags us down. So when you study this text, something like this, and then you have known the true nature of the self, then what you develop is something like a shock absorber. When the cars, if you go in a car in India, I took a car from, I hired it from Delhi to go to Rishikesh to study Vedanta just in February, March, and it didn't have a shock absorber. Oh my goodness! I remember even today I remember every bump that I went on. It's not a very fun ride at all. So I thought my back would be broken by the time I got there. So I had to use some of the yoga that I've practiced. All of that came in handy. I was practicing it so that this doesn't affect any parts of the body. And then the first thing I went there, I told the person when I went there is, please, when I go back, I don't want this car. I want a different kind of car, which has some kind of a shock absorber in it. So it's very important to have that. It's really, really, really important to have that. And what study of the scriptures like this and to know your own true nature will help is have a really good shock absorber. So no matter what happens, so it's not happiness because of something, it is you're happy regardless of anything that happens. So it is happiness in spite of everything being exactly the way it is right now. Which is what? Which is going up and down, having these turbulent experiences having, right? That you have. So what happens is you develop what is called this shock absorber, which will give you the cure for all kinds of shocks in your life. Okay, small or big, it doesn't matter. Anything that happens, you will be able to be completely calm. And does that mean you won't act? Of course you will. But when it comes from this calm mind, when you put out an action, it'll be perfect. So you will respond naturally in every situation. Very naturally you'll respond without falling apart. Okay? And whatever response you put out would be nothing other than perfect. Okay? In this creation, if you use it, it'd be very difficult to use the word perfect, right? Because there's always something that can be improved upon, right? There's always something by which it can be improved upon. Like that's why we're inventing so many devices, right? And next year it goes out the window. A new thing comes which can do something better. So we can't say this iPad Pro is perfect. We can't say that because next year another thing is going to come, and this is not going to be so perfect anymore, right? So we are always careful to use the word perfect. And I wonder sometimes if that even exists, anything that is perfect ever exists, right? We wonder about that. But then, when you gain the knowledge of the self, which is perfect, then you have owned up to that self, which is perfect. Then anything that you do will come out as perfect. It may not seem like it is perfect, but in the long run, you know that it is perfect. It will come out as perfect. Okay, so you can happily and boldly use the word perfect when in the context of self-knowledge. Okay. If there is something that is perfect, this is it. There's nothing else that is more perfect. There's no such thing. Perfect is perfect. You can't qualify it any further, right? So that is it. So you're going to be able to gain this shock absorber by which you can tackle anything in your life. Okay? So is it worth studying the text or not? If I ask you now, you would say yes, it is worth studying it, and it is also worth acquiring whatever qualities that you might need to really understand and gain the benefit of learning the text. Okay, the next benefit is dakshata praptihi. Dakshata literally means dexterity. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. I already jumped ahead and I said anything that you do would be perfect, right? So if you perform even a simple action you perform, it is coming from a place which is very pure, right? So then it is going to reflect in your action, because action doesn't stand by itself. Knowledge is action, right? So why do you run away when you see fire? Because you have that knowledge. You have the first-hand knowledge that if you go and you're near the fire, it's going to burn you. You have that first-hand knowledge. So you'll even before you have a chance to think, the action would have taken place. You would have run away from there. Even before you have had a chance to think about what needs to be done, you would have already done the action. Therefore, knowledge is action. That's how powerful it is. So knowledge is extremely powerful. So what we're doing now is gaining the knowledge. Okay, knowledge of something that is hidden within, which has unlimited power. And so by knowing that, every action that you do will reflect this knowledge automatically without you having to do anything about it. Okay, so that is the power of this gaining such knowledge. Okay, so these are all the benefits of gaining the knowledge of the self.